Hello and welcome to the Live Free and Ham podcast, our bi-weekly show that explores the ham radio topics in New Hampshire, New England, and beyond. Whether you're a regular listener or a first-time guest, we're excited to have you here and appreciate your support. So thank you for tuning in to this week's episode. So, guys, how you doing? I'd like to introduce my cohorts here. So my name's Ryan, W1SNH, and I'm joined here with
Eric, N1JUR.
And Todd, W1STJ.
Excellent. How you guys doing this week? What's going on in your ham radio world?
This week I have to say, not much. I haven't played a whole lot. I mean, obviously we're going to dive into some fun stuff that we did. Todd and I did last week, or was it last week or a week ago? It's been a bit of a time either way.
A couple of weeks ago.
Is it a couple weeks ago? Okay. So, but yeah, I've been enjoying 10 meters. I mean, I finally got everything tweaked. Although I'd have to say just recently I decided to dive into a new app. I don't know if you guys heard of it. It's called Free Data. It's a new ham radio app that's sort of like a combination of JSA call, a little bit of Arden in terms of file transfer stuff, and it all runs on HF in kind of the digital portion of the bands. I'm still tweaking it to try to get it to work because it runs off a ham lib and a few other things, and so I probably could have done it fine with my original radio DX10, but now that I got all the flex, I've got to remember setting up virtual ports and all of that things to make it all work together, and still struggling with it. But the only reason why I'm kind of playing around with it is K5 YVY did a video on it a long time ago, and I haven't seen much traction on it. But I wanted to fire it up and try it since I kind of installed it, but then forgot about it. So I've been playing with that. I'm hopeful that I'll get it working. And, when I do, maybe I'll, share a little bit more on it, and, maybe, we'll make some contacts on it. I don't know how many people are using it or what the subscriber base is on it, or, who's out there, but that's what I've been playing with so far. And, FD8's been just up and running on one of my other screens all day, and, making contacts into, where was the last one I picked up? Africa, and it was coast of Africa, I think it was. If I look at, I can't look at my log right now. It's too far away. And, just, simple stuff, just kind of, as I come by my shack and play something, but that's what I've been up to.
Yeah, you'll have to keep us updated on that software and see how it, once you get it tweaked, how it works for you going forward.
Definitely will.
Nice. Todd, how about you? What's new?
Nothing much. Just doing a little bit of ham radio stuff. I'm going down the end of the month down to Mississippi for one last time. And the plan is I'm going to try to do, not a park I'm going to try to get Mississippi maybe, but I'm trying to go over to Louisiana, knock off a park there. And then if I have enough time, head up to Arkansas, knock off a park there, and then come back and hit the park near the airport in Mississippi, try to do 3 parks in a day. It's going to be tough. I don't get into Mississippi until 10:30. By the time I get done with seeing the kid, it's going to be about 12:30. Then I probably have an hour and a half drive to get the parks. And I don't know how far the park is from Louisiana to Arkansas, but it's all on main highways. So I'm hoping I can kind of crank through them and get 2 more states that I don't have, because I don't see myself going down to Louisiana or Arkansas anytime soon. So
do you have the flexibility? Do you have the flexibility to extend your work day one day?
No, because I'm going down Friday the 30th, and then I'm going to go see him again on the 1st, because they require us to see him in a calendar month. So I asked my boss, and he's going to be turning 21, so this is our last time in December. So I said, well, why don't I just get it out of the way, and then we'll get it done the first of December 1st. So yeah, it's going to be tough. I mean, worst case scenario is if I can get Arkansas and Louisiana and it gets too dark and I want to do that Mississippi, I could get up early and do it. I think my flight leaves at 2 in the afternoon.
You got some time.
If I get up at 6 or 7, get out to that park and activate it, and then go see him, and then hop on the plane. So we'll see. It should be fun. But I was worried when I first looked at the weather. It looked like it was going to rain. I was like, you got to be kidding me. I'm like, the one day I'm going to be down there, it's going to be pouring down rain. But it looks like it's been pushed out a day. So I should be getting lucky.
Awesome. Well,
So be on the
fingers
lookout
crossed.
for me in
Yeah.
Louisiana and Arkansas.
That'll be cool. So
Okay.
excellent.
How about you, Ryan? What's going on? What's up with your
Well-
ham?
Well, so I've been actually working on a lot of hardware stuff this past week. So first big task was to just double check all the bolts and everything on the tower, make sure those are all tightened up. And so had one of the guys who helped install the tower come over with me, and we up the tower. The Yaesu 2800 rotator has 4 bolts on the bottom, and I was a little concerned they might have loosened up a little bit. So I had found a company that specializes in cross-drilled bolt heads. So I've got some 10 millimeter by 16 length 125 bolts that had the hole drilled through the top of them, and we got those installed, and we safety wired them. So in the aviation world, you use stainless steel wire, and you do a pattern on it to help tighten the bolts so that if they start to loosen up, the safety wire will keep them from backing out. And so we use that method, and I'm very confident going through the wintertime that all the bolts will stay very secure.
Mm-hmm.
So that was good. And then just been plugging away at getting the hardware set up for the new Flex. So got a new switch that's going to be mounted in the rack. DC power switch. So I got some remote connectivity for that. And, just sizing up coax cables and everything else. So it's been fun. Have not had a chance too much to play radio, but that'll come in due time.
So when you went up on the tower to actually take the existing bolts out, did you find that they were loose or they were just pretty tight?
Actually, they were tight only because, so when it was originally installed, rookie mistake, I didn't drill the pattern as precise as I should have. And so there was some slop in there.
Mm-hmm.
And probably about 2 weeks after the tower was first installed, the bolts actually all came out.
Oh.
Yep. So it's just sitting there by gravity on the top of the shelf.
Oh boy.
So I went up there with some nylon washers that were the diameter I needed for the bolt to fill in the extra gap in the hole.
Yeah.
That combined with the crush washer got wedged up in there. So this time they were in there pretty secure. So what we did was we raised the whole antenna up, took the mast off the rotator, and re-drilled the holes.
Wow.
So,
now, did he just guy it, or did he go up there with you to do all the work to get all the bolts in and out?
Yeah, no, he did the heavy lifting. He had the hoist and everything. So we lifted the mast up probably a foot, and it just kind of it was interesting because when you put it up, the beam, you balance it so that it's front fore and aft. It's balanced on the mast.
Yeah.
So even when it was off the rotator and it's kind of cockeyed on the top of the tower at an angle, it was just kind of free swinging in the wind, and I was watching it spin around. And so once we got it all attached, we had to, realign it, and I don't know if this is right or wrong, but I decided to align it with true north versus magnetic north.
Oh,
So
okay. What's the pros and
setting.
cons of that?
Well, you got variation, and the magnetic north, which is somewhere in north central Canada, is it's actually moving pretty rapidly past
Mhm.
couple of years. So it's continually moving, and your reference point would be off. So instead of magnetic north, I did it to true north, up where Santa Claus lives at the North Pole, and and there's a
For our younger audience.
that's right. There's a setting in the Apple iOS where you can switch between true or magnetic.
Okay.
So I just made sure I put it on true, lined up the beam with that, and then so whenever I turn the rotator, I just think true north.
Now, does your software able to compensate for that, or are they just all degrees? It doesn't really matter.
Well, you're going to a fixed location on the Earth, so it's going to be the same on a conical projection chart, with a 3D globe. It's going to be just a fixed location. So true north works.
Yeah, cool.
Well,
you don't have to worry about drift with the Flex, so you'll definitely be dead on no matter what.
actually, so that's another thing that came in the mail was let's see, what were the two ends? I don't remember. It was a BNC to a RCA connection, so I could get the GPS DO.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah,
with the
reference.
oscillator connected to the Flex and plugged it in. grabbed a signal right away and got that little green check mark. So it's great.
Yeah, nice. How do you do any of the calculations that they usually do just to see how close you were off? Or
No, I haven't, but maybe I'll go back.
it's a little crazy. I know one of our other buddies did it. I was like, that's reference is really like minuscule, but sure, I guess if you want to be really really accurate as best as you possibly can.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's been the latest this past week, and we'll just keep plugging away at the shack here. So always something to do. And the big adventure to dive into coming up very soon will be Node Red. So, and I know you guys need to jump on that bandwagon too.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do an episode on another Flex episode and just talk about all the Flex ads and some of the stuff that we've tweaked and kind of as a follow up for sure. I mean, obviously you'll be able to jump in because you'll have a whole bunch more to add to that, so it'll be fun. We'll have to maybe invite some of the other Flex guys on to shoot the breeze on that one.
Yes. So cool. Well, so rumor has it, guys, that some in the recent past here, you guys did a very fascinating POTA rove up the coast. So I think when I heard rumors about it first, I think I heard it was going to start out as a 10 park rove. All right. And then it evolved and kind of, took a life of its own. So I don't know, give me a quick, first start with like a big picture view. What was the original plan, and how did you guys approach this event, and how did it play out?
Well, we've been talking about doing this for a long time, and we just never had the time to do it. And we said, you know what, we should just go right up the coast and see how many parks we can get, and in a day, and just have fun with it and see what we could do. So the weather was 80 degrees. It was
awesome.
A rare day. And I said, hey, can you take off Friday? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, all right, I am too. We're doing it. This is the day we're doing it. This is the last day we're gonna. We can't get it better.
Was this the night before that you planned it?
No, it was probably maybe like a
day or two before. We started talking about it, but we weren't sure. The weather was kind of messed up. And I'm like, if it's nice, I'm taking it. I'm like, if you're not coming, I'm gonna do it. I'm going out. I'm gonna hit the coast and just go up the thing. So he wasn't sure what was going on with his schedule. It all worked out. We get there, we start down in Mass, and we worked our way all the way up to Maine, and it was like phenomenal. It was perfect weather. It was like summertime. It was comfortable. There wasn't a lot of humidity. We're right on the ocean. I thought I saw a seal, but it was actually a guy bobbing in the water in October. I'm like, is that a seal? I'm like, oh no, that's a guy. We did see a seal though. But yeah, it was just awesome. It was just a perfect day, and the bands were like with us. Like we did 10 meters up for the first 5 parks, and it was crazy. And then we ended on 20 the last 2, and it was a great experience. And I got an award for it. I got the Warthog Award. I didn't even know there was an award for it.
Cool. But, so what does that signify? What was the?
It just said that if you did 5 parks in a day, you get a. I don't know. It was one of those.
It's I don't even know. Before the Parks on the Air did roves in general for awards, they did radars, and when they started realizing that radars were too difficult because it didn't align with the get 10 contacts to complete a park, a radar does 5 contacts and you move on to the next spot. They kind of said, all right, let's scrap this and we'll insert said rove now. So the awards, play out of you have to be an X number of distance away. It used to be you have to be X number of distance away from park, but now it doesn't really even matter now. It's just as long as you do X number of parks a consecutive day, each level the awards are for completing 3 or 5 or 10 or 12 and whatnot. Yeah, so it's good to see that they still had it, but yeah, that's kind of what the award was for completing the most parks.
Very cool. So Eric, what tell me about the equipment. What antenna did you use? Whose car did you take? And then I got a follow-up question for Todd on that. So
All right. Well, so I wholeheartedly agree with Todd. It was like a perfect storm. And when I say storm, I mean no storm, clear skies, calm ocean, nobody in sight, perfect like after season stuff. So the whole event was just like, it couldn't have been any more, perfect outside of, physically planning it, minute by minute. So yeah, gear, we kind of just double teamed each other. I brought all my 891 pack and all the batteries and everything else. Todd brought his DX10 with as a backup, and we decided we may use it. We actually did. And his 891 and his Buddy Pole Pro, and so he had a pretty well-oiled setup. Mine was the same way. I had my Wilfer recoil as a backup with me, but I was kind of managing all of the recording gear, and he had all of the equipment gear, and so from a standpoint of radios, it was full QRO, 100 watts, all sideband, and we had just basically backup batteries to each other. So as his 20 amp hour battery started to wane, I'd flip over to mine, and vice versa. So we never really ever had any power issues or any difficulty in that area. From a driving standpoint, all me. I'm one of those guys that I can't sit in the passenger seat no matter what without feeling like I've got
I offered to drive. He said
he
no.
did
So
I turned
I
him
wasn't
down.
going to complain. I'm like, all right, well, you're going to drive. I don't.
So
But
and yeah, go ahead.
No, it was we were like a well-oiled machine. Like the first park, once we got it set up and stuff, we didn't even have to talk. We'd pull in, I'd set up the antenna, he'd get the radios and the video equipment going. We basically finished around the same time. Then we would do the thing, and then we'd pack up, and like I'd pack up the antenna, he'd get the radios or whatever, and we'd be on to the next one. So we were definitely, you could tell that we had done this before. We had done parks before. We knew how to do the equipment, and we knew what needed to be done and how to get it done. And it just, as we moved through the parks, we just were getting faster and faster at it. Like we were just set.
And that was actually my question. So compared to the first park to the last park, what would you say was the improvement in time on setup and breakdown?
I wouldn't say improvement. I'd say it's because of our old age. We just got tired faster by the time we got to the seventh park.
Oh, really?
So
by Park 7, we were pretty beat.
Yeah. So I've got a bunch of tips we can talk about after about things that I kind of pre-planned, and Todd managed kind of like all of the like, let's get the gear ready, let's get on the air, let's get going. I kind of did all of the back stuff planning, so bringing snacks and water and all that other stuff I just left in the truck, because it was like you're not going to stop because you're on a roll and you don't want to like miss your pace. And from my standpoint, I had kind of done some of that route before. I had a radar that I did a while back on my own, and when I learned from it, I was like, I didn't have enough water, I didn't have spare batteries, I spent a little too much time at certain parks, so I really kind of kept us on the clock. So like first park was like promptly 8:15 we were on the air, 8:30 we were up to 10 contacts, wrapping up at 8:45, pack it all up, off to the next park, and kind of kept that pace, because the way the course, and if I had a map I should have posted one up, but it was pretty much the parks were a good 10 minutes away from each other, so we could easily get through off to the next park. And setup time was great because everybody was at the beach, so we had the pavilions wide open if they had one, or the spaces were wide open for us to be able to just plop down and get going.
And were you operating at any of the parks from the parking lot? Did you walk into the park area? What was kind of the layout there?
So depending on where we were, so the first park we walked out to the beach, and we were up against the on the water, on the sand, and we had a little fold up table, and just our fold up chairs, so that was part of the way. And then if the park had picnic benches, then we'd use them and leave the chairs and the table in the truck. And we kind of went like that, depending. And then we were at one of the parks, or was it two of the parks, we did it out of the parking lot, out of the back of his truck. That's when we used the DX10.
Oh yeah, that was Constitution and the Ordinoid Point, because we literally pulled in the parking lot. Yeah.
So we just were like, we just used the
tailgate of the truck. Yeah.
Drop the tailgate down and set up right there, and that was our three options, really. So we were prepared for either any situation. We were, whether there was a place to sit or not, we had options. So
Yeah, I mean, we packed pretty much, I think, our usual accoutrement of like chairs, and obviously you had that great table when we needed it. I mean, I think the only time we ever really used the DX10 was when we were operating out of the back of the truck, because it was just drop it out of the back of the cab and put it out, and we're off to the races. And that, I think we had very good luck with that DX10 when we operated both those times on the tailgate. I mean, we could have sat at both of those parks, and I think banged out way more than the 15 or 16 contacts that we kind of just held ourselves for a little bit on, because it was just so good. And Constitution, and we'll circle back on it, but Constitution also apparently is in Islands on the Air.
Oh yeah,
We didn't know that, so that attracted a bunch more people too, and so it added to
on Newcastle Island. So the guy, we were finishing up, and we had a little pile up going, and we stayed like that one. I think we had like 20, 25 or something.
25
I mean, we could have stayed longer, but we wanted to hit Maine before the place closed. So we kind of called in. But at the end, the guy was like, "Hey, can you give me the name of the island you're on or something?" And I'm like, "Huh?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, "The island you're on." I'm like, "Oh." I'm like, "Oh yeah, Newcastle Island." He goes, "Yeah, I'm doing Islands on the Air. That's one of the islands." So
that's cool.
Yeah, we should split that for points, but I haven't gotten around to it yet.
Yeah, so that was kind of cool that we helped that guy out. But it was good, and we had a guy from Italy. I think, was he from Italy? The guy that kind of followed us through.
There was a couple of them.
Yeah, they followed us through the day, and
I was curious. Do you have any hunters that were kind of following you up the coast?
Oh yeah. I did. I did a little kind of cross reference to the logs. Spain, Italy, England. Those are the three big ones that were like.
Mhm.
And I think we kind of tipped them off early on when we were like, "Hey, we're going to be doing 10 Park Rove, and we're going to the next park," and they'd be like, "All right, we're waiting for you," and they were definitely waiting for us. There was no doubt every time we got there.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, we also tried to stay on the same frequency.
Yeah.
So we said hopefully we'll be on this frequency if no one's using it. And I think it was only like once that someone was on it, and we had to just change it a little bit, but tried to stay in the same area.
So talk to me about the band conditions. What were they like?
Go ahead. This is your baby.
Yeah, they were awesome. So the last park that I had done with my antenna, I did on 10 meters, and that was up in Vermont. It was my twofer. And actually, it should have been a threefer, because I found out there's a park that from Izzo that ranges all of New England, but I didn't know at the time. So I did it as a twofer, and I did it on 10 meters. So my antenna was set up for 10 meters. That was the last time I used it. So I said, well, let's just start with 10 meters and see, what we get. And we had like a direct line. Like, it was like a hard line to Europe, and it was like clear as day. Just awesome. So we did 10 meters, and we were just like, it was crazy. And we're like, well, let's just stay on 10. And we just kept going around until 10 died. And when we were getting like later, like almost early evening, later in the afternoon, and we weren't hearing anything. So we were just like, all right, let's just switch to 20. And then that's when, there was like millions of people on 20.
We held 10 meters till about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, which is totally unheard of in most, scenarios. 10 usually dies off by noontime, from my experience, and trying to make contacts. And you're lucky if the openings are there after in the afternoon until the gray line kind of crosses. But, it was I turned to Todd. I'm like, dude, and the funny thing is, I'll mention is that I put together a video of it. So if you head over to my channel, I'll post it in the show notes too as well. You can go check it out. It was a blast to go through all those parks. But in it, I had mentioned, I'm like, Todd, apparently we just have like a direct pipeline to Europe with your antenna. And we were like, we got to play around with the elevated radio just to see if we can like zero in, say, let's go Northern Europe or let's go Southern Europe, and see if we can pick up anybody in Italy and, over.
Yeah, we were starting to experiment. We were moving the counterpoise in different directions, and we were also setting up the antenna differently. So on the antenna, you can move the coil. You could have it at the bottom. You could put it in the middle, depending on how you configure it. And I'm like, I didn't even thought of it. I just put it together, and it didn't make a difference. So whichever way the coil was, it didn't matter, and it didn't seem to matter which way we had the counterpoise, because we were hitting Europe like there was no tomorrow.
Yeah,
that's very cool. Awesome. And so what about the I just drawn a blank. The what was your favorite park if you had to just choose one?
Probably the main one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my baby. That's one of my favorites. I usually activate Fort McCleary like anytime I'm up in Maine, just because the views are just
Yeah,
to die
it's
for.
real it's really pretty. It's you're kind of like in this old ruined fort, and you're kind of just like you're above the water, but you're kind of overlooking the bay. And
Hmm.
yeah, it was pretty. And you see the boats coming and going. So it was, like I said, it was 80 degrees. So like all the boaters were out there for like one last hurrah. So there were a lot of boats going around, and
Yeah,
it was
there's definitely like we were trying to hit at least 8 parks. There was one park on the way up through as you go through Portsmouth called Fort Stark. That's actually like kind of the sister fort. Because you can be at Fort Stark and see Fort McCleary and vice versa, when you're in those 2 parks. But they're both great views and just, rolling greens and, kind of just, rubble of, a previous supported fort. One being on New Hampshire side, the other one being on the Maine side. But yeah, we couldn't activate that one, and that was kind of a bummer because it was under construction and they weren't allowing anybody on it. But yeah, I had to confer. I mean, McCleary's near and dear to my heart for sure.
Very cool.
and then what was the one that what was the park that we were right on the water? We almost had the antenna in the water.
Oh, that was Northampton.
Northampton, yeah.
That one was a great park, but that one also. How many times do we have to go? Can I get your call again?
Yeah,
Because we were
because of
so
the
close to the
waves.
water. The waves are just like louder than the radio could ever be, and it was just like, can I get your call again?
You probably could have used headphones for that one, but
Well, I was going to ask, maybe headphones. Yes.
yeah. But that was cool because I mean we were like literally like that. There wasn't much beach, and I mean the water was getting kind of close.
Yeah, we were getting up on
but that
high
was
at that point.
and that's where we saw the woman in a bikini wearing a witch's hat.
Oh yes,
I'm like
weirdos coming out.
Is that a woman in a bikini wearing a witch's hat? Because it was around Halloween. So
Oh yeah, you're just north of Salem, Mass, right after Halloween, so that makes sense.
Yeah, I turned around. Yep. Okay, let's just keep going.
The witches are out.
Yeah. Did you have any of the other public come up to chat with you?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Actually, it was kind of funny because we had a very first park, which was why am I drawing it back?
Salisbury.
Yeah, Salisbury State Park. That one, we were literally setting up and getting the radios, and a guy walked up and he's like, "Hey, you guys ham radio operators?" And we're like, "Yeah." And he's like, "What's going on?" And we started explaining. And then come to find out, he's got his own YouTube channel. He's I should dig it up, but he's a great tinkerer. He's like kind of one of those guys that likes to take things and repurpose them from an electronic standpoint. So he's got on his channel. He wanted to take an old Mercedes-Benz diesel and turn it into an electric car by allowing the motor turn the generator, and he just he repurposes a lot of stuff. He's kind of like one of those junk guys that likes to do that type of stuff, tinkering. But he's like, yeah, I used to do ham radio and on. So he was kind of one of those guys. And then we had a few other people that were interested but just didn't make anything. And then we had that last guy at Northampton come up to us and was like, "Oh yeah, I have a buddy who, he's got a bunch of telephone poles," and started to describe his whole entire antenna field and where he was. And he was pretty cordial to kind of talk to, and definitely liked to see what we were doing, and then was a little curious.
That's very cool.
Then at Fort McCleary, we had a guy come up and he was just wearing shorts and a t-shirt, kind of looked like a beach bum, and found out he was the park ranger. He was basically coming over, and I thought he was going to ask us what we were doing. He's like, "You guys got to get out of here. I want to leave."
Yeah,
so that was around. What was that? It was around 5 o'clock.
Yeah, 5 o'clock, 5:30, or so. They were closing the park, so he's like, "Yeah, you're parked inside the the park. So if you want to move your car outside, you can stay here. But you just I'm like, we're wrapping up." And at that point, I think we were starting to lose gas, in any steam that we had.
Yeah, that was it was a long day, but it was a great POTA day. I mean, it was just a lot of fun, and we had perfect weather, and it wasn't crowded. Like if we had done that in the summer, we would have never gotten that far because normally you had to deal with the crowds. It didn't cost us anything to go into any of these parks. They're all like there's no
out of season.
So that would have cost us some money if we were paying for each park. So it was really nice. It was cool. I mean, I'd like to do it again. I'd like to maybe even start earlier and try to get to 10, try to keep moving it up, go 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever.
Yeah. Absolutely. So that same day that you guys were doing the Park Rove, I was at work and I was in the corporate aircraft.
We forgot about this.
Yeah. So we had a reposition between Belfast up to Stockholm. And as we're taking off, I look at my phone and I see the reverse beacon and I see your guys' call signs pop up. So I'm like, oh, how about that? So I dial in the frequency, and at first, the first, I don't know, 5-10 minutes, I must have been in the skip zone or something because I could just barely hear you. So I'm just kind of monitoring. And then I threw my call sign out. You guys heard me, but there was a lot of noise and I couldn't hear you and I got busy. And so, I don't know, it must have been 10, 15 minutes later.
It was about.
Yeah, so we were getting ready to start the descent and land, and you guys were coming in like 5.9 plus 30. There was no meter on the radio in the airplane, but it was crystal clear, like we were standing right here on with headphones. And I threw the call sign out, but then I just started getting real busy, and I couldn't chat. I didn't have time to chat. I'm like,
well, that I didn't know you were. At first, we didn't. I heard you were coming in a lot clearer than I think you could hear us. We heard you the first time a lot clearer. And I didn't really put it together that you were flying. And then the second time, I'm like, I think he's flying. I said, I think that's why he's busy. He's either landing or, something's going on. Like, that's why he can't talk to us. Because Eric's like, how come he's not talking to us?
Well, you said please hold. And I'm like, how long does he want us to hold for? I was like, okay, let's just move on. He'll come back.
Yeah. So I think officially we did not establish a contact, but
you're in the log. Sorry, bud.
I got you in the log.
There's no signal report. Doesn't matter.
But it's funny because like this is like now the second time that I've gotten you in that heading over there, on the air. It's kind of cool that you and I have talked while you've been like at 45,000 feet flying around, and
we were 45,000.
Yeah, and this is where the first time I did it when you I think you texted me and you said, hey, I'm on 10 meters, and I heard you. And then this time, we're just doing a pod activation. It was pretty awesome. So you don't get a lot of people you get from airplanes checking in with you.
It's cool. It's unique, that's for sure. So excellent. Yeah. What other highlights about the Rove that you remember?
Well, I got a laundry list, but you can dive in, Todd, if you want to chime in.
Go ahead. I mean, there's.
Yeah, I think we touched on some of them. If you're ever planning kind of something like this, it does take a little bit of time to kind of think it out through. I mean, obviously, we mentioned at the beginning, we just called each other up 48 hours before and said, hey, let's just go do this. And I would say, even if you don't even complete, 3 of the, 15 or whatever number you have as a goal, you still had fun and, you're out doing it and you learned a lot. But I think, like as Todd touched on, we really did, even without kind of saying stuff, and we've done parks before, he talked about where we worked together, where, he had his kind of roles and responsibilities and, I had my setup and we just kind of met in the middle and then teardown was kind of the same thing. It just went, like clockwork. And we didn't even have to kind of, say, hey, did you remember this? Because it was just like everything went back in the bag. We all did a cursory look back at the bench and then we were off to the next thing because we just knew, where everything went and everything had a place and whatnot. So that kind of helped our schedule overall, which, is kind of important when you want to do a Rove because, 10 meters, as we were talking about, just really kind of took off and we could have stayed at each park for a good hour, no problem, and netted like 50, 60 contacts each park without even batting an eyelash. But, we were really set on kind of just, achieving the maximum goal, which was 10 when we set out. But, 7 is still, I think, in my mind, admirable and a great, way to end the day. And so, it's about like planning your schedule a little bit, but knowing that, everything else around the world's probably going to, try to knock that off course a little, and, keep you down. But, we benefited a lot in that sense. And, it's kind of some other small little tips that, you might see in the video that, I've gotten questions on from a bunch of people that really worked well. I thought having that dual mic set up, Todd, was awesome. I mean, that saved so much time in the pass the mic approach. I mean, it was hard enough for us to remind the operator or the hunter on the other end, hey, we have another we have another operator, but we didn't have to try to, snatch the mic or you're out. So, setting that up saved us minutes, per contact.
Yeah. So basically we had a splitter into the radio. So we each had our own hand mic, which is it's good when you're so Eric and I have done a couple of parks together and normally in the beginning we were just passing it back and forth and that can get kind of like, now we each have one. And, when you're saying second operator, I don't have to pass the mic. He can instantly, go in, because a lot of these people will forget we have two operators, even though we tell them, and then they disappear. So we're trying to make sure they got both operators, and then, having that, it's a lot smoother. The other thing that we did, I think, prep wise, is we had the list of parks that we were thinking of doing, and then we went on Hammers and we wrote up pre-set up the logs. So that way, and then we had a list of what the park number was, and then we'd go through and you find it on the log, and then we would just go from there. So we didn't have to sit there and wait and set up the logs and get everything. It was already done. So that was a little pre-prep stuff that made things a lot easier. And
that's a nice tip. I like that.
Yeah, it was good. And like I said, it was like we had talked about doing it for, I mean, probably since I started, right? Like we've been talking about this for a while. And it just, I was like, I was tired of working. I wanted a long weekend, and it was going to be beautiful. And I'm like, I am not going to work when it's 80 degrees, because it's not going to be 80 for much longer.
Oh, dude.
And
we came off that
I'm like,
high, totally.
yeah. And I was like, I'm doing this. And then, yep, that's what we did. And it was really nice. And it was a lot of fun. And like I said, it was, I'd love to do it again. I want to do it again. I want to see if we can get more, and even do some of the different parks. But being in that strip along the coast, the parks are so close to each other. Like, what's the farthest we drove before park was like maybe 10, 15 minutes.
4 miles.
Yeah, it's not even, so you can do it because they're right there. It's like you're not wasting your time driving, an hour here, a half hour here. So it's just like I mean, before I could even like sit down, take a breath, get a drink of water, we're pulling into the next park. So it was, so that was, something that when we talked with Kyle and Jason, they were saying, we're fortunate because we have so many parks in such a dense area. We're like in Missouri and Texas, they're like, they got to drive, an hour, 2 hours away to get to the next park. And all our parks are like on top of each other. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, knowing the route is a totally important thing, like, because I knew that in the back of my head, so we didn't have to think about like, okay, where's the next park destination wise. So if you can map that stuff out in advance, it's going to save you, more time on the, the opportunity to be able to finally figure out once you get to the park, if you've never been there before, where you want to set up. I already kind of knew where the best spots, kind of where to plop down the gear, and it was just a matter of whether or not there were people there in those spots, or we had it wide open. And because I think we did it at the time we did, it totally gave us a lot of advantage to be able to just get set up, go, and not be interrupted, or not have to wander around trying to find an open picnic table or whatever.
Very cool. So on round 2, when you guys go do it again, are you going to do the same parts again and kind of remap it, or are you going to do something totally different?
I don't know, Todd, you tell me. We got to do it in reverse order this time.
Yeah, maybe we do it in reverse order. The thing is with those parks, they're all in a line, right? So trying to get as many parks. I mean, like I said, we missed Fort Stark, so that one is another one we could add to it. And then there was a couple in Portsmouth that we just kind of bypassed just because
they were too.
We wanted to get to Maine, because I hadn't activated Maine yet, so I wanted to do Maine. That's what I told him. I said, whatever we do, we have to hit Maine. Like that's that's got to be our final destination.
Yeah.
So and that was the far, like, to get from, where were we at, Fort Constitution to Fort McCleary. That's the longest drive part. I mean, that was like what, 20 minutes maybe.
If that,
20-minute drive. Yeah. So I mean, that was like the farthest distance. But there are some parks that were a little inland that we could have picked up. So yeah, I mean, maybe we'd do different ones, but I think that's to get the quantity of them. I think that's the best route, at least around here on the coast, because like I said, they're all on a line. So you're just basically knocking them off every couple miles.
Very cool.
Yeah,
what other organizational tips do you have, Eric?
Oh God, yeah. Well, things that we didn't go well that I should have remembered just because I'm getting older. I didn't pack sunscreen, and by the time I think I was done, I was like pretty red lobster. I had a sunburn, but it wasn't anything that I wasn't expecting because we were totally out there. But the only other thing that I missed is we got lucky where a couple of the parks still had open restroom facilities, but when you're busting butt between beach locations and stuff, and especially if it's after season, a lot of that stuff is already closed. So you got to kind of, map out, okay, where's going to be the quick bathroom breaks, that type of stuff. Because you're gonna get to the last park and you're gonna be like, oh my gosh, I can't do 10 contacts. I go find Mother Nature or something. But it's a little bit insane there. And so that was the only thing I learned there. And then just knowing, like we said, when you park at these parks, know when they close. So if you get late, you can still kind of stay and make your quota if you can't get to it.
Okay, very cool. So it looks fascinating. Hopefully schedules align and I can join in on this adventure.
That would be fun.
Yeah.
I think three activators I have not yet done a park where I've had 3 activators, unless it's like been a meetup or something like that. But even then, 3 activators all at one, yeah, that would be a challenge for sure. I'd love to try that one.
What I was thinking when we were doing it was having like 2 teams, one starting in Mass, one starting in Maine, and crisscross. Come down, come up, see which park we end up meeting in together, and going that way. But yeah, I mean, it was fun. I mean, I think it's just a good time and just hanging out. It's like if you like doing parks on the air, and the gear, the 891 is such a good POTA radio. It really is. It does its job. It's so easy. It's compact. You get 100 watts out of it, and then the antenna. Once you learn your antenna and how to set it up, and you've done it enough times, you're not even thinking about it, right? Like I think when we went to 20 meters, I even knew, like, oh yeah, it's the blue one, it's the blue mark, and it's 13 down.
Right.
But knowing your antenna, knowing your gear, and knowing how to set it up and all that stuff helps because it shortens the time, because you're basically a race against time.
Mm-hmm.
And we would have never, if the bands weren't as good, we would have never even probably gotten 7. But because the bands were so well, and we were getting so much on 10 meters, it was just, I mean, we just kind of cruised through it. It was so, I mean, we did like, weren't we like at one park? You're like, I can't, like, we've only been doing this like 45 minutes. We're already done with the second park.
We were
It was
doing
crazy.
We got plenty of time. This is going to be a walk in the park, no problem. And they're like, yeah, we're going to get bitten in the butt somewhere along the line. And we didn't, thank God, knock on wood. But yeah, there were those moments of like, okay, we're just shaving time off here a little bit.
Yeah, and I think the 10 meters was actually a godsend, because
Oh.
20 meters was like, there were so many people on 20. I mean, it was like as soon as they heard you, it was like a pile up, right?
Yep.
So it's hard to leave a pile up, at least
Oh,
for
sure.
me.
Absolutely.
But with the 10 meters, we were able to get the 10, 15, and then it would kind of slow down a little bit. And then it gave us an easy way to get out of there. When we got to the 20 meters, like I think at Fort Constitution, we were there for a while just because we just kept getting, finally we had to say, all right, we got to go. We have to go to the next park, even though we had a ton of people that we could have sat there and worked. So
Yeah,
I think that made it easier too.
I think we had the 10 meters was definitely great. You had mentioned obviously we were stuck to one frequency. That was, I think, our blessing in disguise there, because how unlucky, especially if you try on 20 meters, to keep the same frequency if you're doing a multi-rove. Do you think you're going to get that same frequency when you get to the next park? Probably highly unlikely. So it made it really easy for the hunters just to like sit there, camp out, and wait like half an hour or whatever the time frame was, and boom, they were back on top of us, and they were like, yep, we worked again, no problem, and off to the the next one. So they were very much lockstep with us the whole entire way. And
Yeah, and we were telling them, our next park is 20 minutes away, give us a half an hour, we should be back on, and we're going to try to keep around this frequency and stuff. And they hung out with us like the whole day. So
that
Well,
was
that's
great.
very cool. I mean, the continual practice of doing it over and over, that's how you get better, the repetition. So I'm sure the second rove here will be that much better.
And a little bit more challenging, I'm sure, especially if we bring on more and we try to do something a little bit. I'd like to throw the monkey wrench system and say one team should be QRP only, just to see
Yeah.
who does that and see how it pans out, and see who makes it quicker, because that would be a very interesting heads up kind of challenge to see.
Or a different mode.
Yeah, totally. That was, I brought my FT8 stuff, but I knew like once 10 meters started getting hot for us, I was not going to crack out the computer and waste time, because we were just given, like, they were just like pouring and handing contacts to us. It was just like, why mess things up? It's too good.
Very cool. Well, I love the idea, and we'll have to kind of look at a map and throw some pins on some locations in addition to the route you guys chose. So
Yeah.
I'm sure I'm sure we could probably do like South Shore, along going down through Plymouth. Sure, there's
yeah.
a ton of parks that way too.
Oh yeah.
So
Been down there a little bit. They are a little bit more spaced out, so
farther.
we'd have to be a little bit more careful with planning and strategy. But yeah, it could be done, especially like if you play down like the inside of the Cape. Like I would love to start the Cape run, like start right over the Bourne Bridge, start that very first park, and wrap all the way out to the very far point, because you can literally hit a park everywhere down Route 6, and you're just traveling the length of Route 6. And I can't remember how many parks total it would be, but by the time you get to the very last park, which is out on the Race Point, that's like a big grid square for everybody. So that would be
Mhm.
the best of the best, because no matter what time you got there, whether it be late shift or not, people would be like, I gotta work that park because it's
What is
not,
that? FN 53? Is that it?
yeah, I'd have
Yeah,
to
I
pull
think
it up
so.
on the
Yeah.
quota
How,
page.
how many parks are on Cape Cod?
Um,
You know,
I will
that could
pull
be
it up.
that could be another thing. We could just work Cape Cod, the whole
Not
Yeah,
sure.
the whole Cape.
there it is. While you're talking,
You'd have
wow.
a continually good ground plane right next to the ocean there.
Oh, totally.
Yeah,
I mean, we had
I
that one.
love the ocean. That's like it's so awesome.
But, did you have any issues with sand getting in the gear?
A little bit, not much. I mean, it was more, if I picked something up and put it over, but we blew it off. I guess if I was gonna do it again, I'd maybe brought like maybe one of those air cans, that
Hmm.
spray air just to get it, but it wasn't too bad. And we weren't always on I think there was like one, two, or like three that we were actually like on the beach, like in the
Okay.
Right.
sand. The other ones we were on picnic tables, or we were on like grass, or the back of his truck. So yeah, it wasn't too bad.
Very cool.
So the Cape run, if we count the two right before you cross over the bridge into official Cape, that'd be a total 10 parks. There's a big gap from Sandwich to the Mashpee side, but that could
Well, the
definitely
the,
be.
the Cape Cod Rail Trail is like the whole. You can go anywhere. It's
Hmm.
Yeah.
huge.
Oh, true. That's
So
right. Yeah, you could always play
you
that
could
too.
hop. You could in the gap. You could hit the rail. Figure out where to do the rail trail. But
However,
yeah, that.
the big wild card on the Cape, as everyone knows, is traffic.
Yeah.
But not if you do it in October.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but I mean, why wait till October?
Yeah.
But
Well,
Well,
we could do it in April or May.
it's a consideration. You got to think of the traffic. They can get really gridlocked down there.
oh yeah, especially trying to get in or out. But yeah,
Yes.
that's definitely one of those things that I would try. I mean, the last one on the destination list would be the National Seashore one, which is pretty much kind of the Race Point area, because that National Seashore wraps all the way down into Providence Town. So that's one where you
Mhm.
could either activate before you get into Turo, that area, or you could just drive all the way down to Providence Town and activate down on those edge of those beaches and really get the grid square, like you said, Ryan.
Cool. Very cool. Nice. So, your top three, not even top three, maybe your top favorite thing of the day of that event. What's your most memorable?
Hmm.
I think just hanging out. It was
Yeah.
fun. I mean, we hadn't hung out and just done radio and without, we've all been pretty busy. I've been busy, Ryan, you've been busy, Eric's been busy. And it was just kind of cool hanging out and just playing radio. So I mean, I thought that was it was a good day. It was just a good day. It didn't seem too long. It didn't seem too short. It was like, we didn't have anything planned, so there wasn't like we had to rush home and there's a time limit, and we just kind of played it by ears. And like by 5 o'clock, we were both pretty much like, yeah, we're done. Like we could have probably gone and found another park, but it was
We
like,
could
why
have.
ruin a good time? Because we
I
were
know.
kind of hurt. We're like, this is it's getting a little tiring. So, but it was I hadn't worked those parks, so for me it was even better than Eric because he had worked them all. So I got all these new parks, in my log, and that was kind of cool. But I'd wanted to work them, and I love going out to the beach, and just the smell of the ocean, and it was just nice. And the weather, I mean, here it is, like it was almost Halloween, and we're sitting there, like we should have brought shorts. I mean, a
Yeah.
change of shirt. It was that hot, but we were looking for shade, which is kind of crazy. Like normally in October, we'd be looking for the sun. We're like,
Mhm.
oh, is there shelter? And what was the park that we were gonna sit under the thing, and they were having like a party or something?
Oh, that was why am I drawing a blank? I remember Which one?
There's there was like a picnic tables and like a a roof over it, and I was like, oh, that's perfect,
That
right?
wasn't Was that Hampton? No. Which one was that? That was the one right after.
Northampton, maybe.
Northampton was the beach one where it was just the shores right there in front
Yeah, it
of
was
us.
after that one.
Oh no, it was Rye Harbor. That's what it was. That
Rye
was the one
Harbor.
with the
Okay.
grass area and whatnot. Yeah, that one
Yeah.
was.
So yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say
No.
that one that was the only rest area that was available. Thank God they had the restrooms open, but I think because of the party, it probably would have been saved our butts because it was like, okay, cool, we're a third away there. Let's just refuel, refresh, kind of get going. And I know Todd was already hot to trot because you were always just like on the pick the bench ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was like, let's get this going.
Cool.
No, but that was so that was like who would have thought that they would have had like they took over the whole thing, but there was another bench down there and we had like right on the water, and it was perfect, and we set it up, and as soon as we turned on actually the first when we turned on the radio, the first you plug in, you check the SWR, you good, you turn on the radio, and then boom, we're hearing, that was in Mass. We were hearing we're like, oh, this is gonna be good. And it was the same way. As soon as we got in there, we start calling out, Europe comes right back in. And it was just like, wow, I'm like, this is just crazy.
That's awesome. Eric, what was your most memorable part of the day?
Most memorable park would have to be. I'm trying to think of. For me, it was. Like Todd said, it's about the relationship side thing that's important. I think I like to be able to like interact when people come by who are curious a lot. So I try to spend some time having conversation with those folks. So that happened kind of in two places, obviously being Salisbury, and then the other one was Northampton. They just I like to share the hobby, and I like to spread kind of the radio cheers, I say, and answer people's questions, and they could be as far-fetched as like, are you doing bird migratory monitoring, or the worst of like, where's your tinfoil hat type thing. But most of the people that I bump into when I tell them about ham radio, they're like, what? And that's kind of my cue of like, oh, okay, well, let me explain what ham radio is, and and start to kind of make their curiosity peak a little bit. And we actually, I think the most memorable one was the last, at McCleary, where we had a bunch of teenagers. No, they weren't teenagers. They were the 20 somethings, and they looked like, they just rode in on their bicycles kind of thing. And, they all come stumbling down with like these big, like, wide open eyes. And they're all like, what are you doing? And we're like, we're doing ham radio. They're like, what's ham radio? And we're like, oh, okay, here's the opening. And so they're like, do you just talk to people? We're like, yeah, we just finished talking to people over in Europe. They're like, Europe? You talk like, like, it wasn't like, oh, why didn't you pick up your cell phone? It was like, no, you talked to somebody in Europe, just 2 seconds ago, or, Italy, or, you name the place that, was on our list. And, we made contact with them, and they were like, oh, that's just so awesome. So like, whether or not they'll ever like, make that connection down the road, for me, it's like, at least, plant the seed, and people are, interested, and hopefully, down the road, they'll bump into somebody else who, does ham radio on an emergency communications level or something. And, it might spark more of an interest.
Well, that's very cool.
Yeah.
And that's one of the main reasons why we started the podcast, is to help promote ham radio in New Hampshire and New England and beyond.
Yeah, I think if we went to one of those parks that people visit, and we went there in the morning, set up and had flyers, and maybe like a little shelter or whatever, and had someone operating and then someone to be able to talk, I think you'd get you'd see a lot of people come up and talk about it. And I think that would be another cool thing to do, is like maybe go to Fort McCleary for the day, set up, and and prepare to like kind of pass things out for the POTA flyers, what ham radio is all about. But before we end, I just want to say we also had a wedding that we felt like we were in, because they were they were like way down the coast,
Yeah.
and out on this pier, and this guy's mic was just, I don't know what it was echoing or bouncing off, but I mean, it literally sounded like we were sitting there listening to him through the ceremony and the party and everything else.
I'm sure it came across in the video. I just didn't, really look to see if it did, but
Right. I mean, I was like, well, I'm like, how can we hear them so well?
oh, it was crazy. I was like at one time I was thinking like maybe our antenna's feeding back in their system and they hear us calling 5959
Right.
at Fort blah blah
Yeah.
blah and they're like what? But apparently not. So oh well.
Oh, that's awesome. Very cool. Well, I'm sure it'd definitely be a great bouncing off point to plan for the next year, and go from there. It's sounds like a
Totally.
great event.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
wrapping up, any last parting comments from either of you guys?
Oh, well, for me, I would say if you're going to do any of this, find a buddy. That's the biggest thing. Don't try to do them on your own. I mean, you can, and you could be successful with it with some really good planning, but as we all I think kind of touched upon, the adventure is all about just hanging out with somebody else who does the same thing that you like to do. And you're doing it together and you're just like, dude, it just makes that so much sweeter. I think, as I said, Todd and I probably came off that with like a big high and we're like, okay, when's the next one? What other radio stuff do we want to do? Like, come on, there's got to have more. It's like I get in the truck and it's like I got to turn on the 2-meter radio and talk to more people and tell them how much I love doing radio. And so you kind of just come off this total experience. And I love the fact that we could crack out our DX10. That I think was my I was like, I forgot how much I love that radio. I forgot how much it's awesome for like POTA events, especially if you don't have to truck it like in if you're hiking into a spot. But yeah, that made a lot of our, contacts and probably a lot of our contacts, when we operated with it. But it just made, that whole experience sweeter and really cool.
Which also was motivating me to get my
Your
Go box done. I just had it one of those things where you kind of pulled it out, but it'd be nice to have it in the Go box. So definitely going to build that over the winter.
That would have been way easier, but then flip the switch, plug in, go.
Yeah.
Well, until you get it built, you're happy to borrow Team ICOM. So
we might.
It's always ready to go.
We should in our 2-team row. We'll have Team ICOM and Team Yezu and see how they meet in the middle. Because at that point we could both do QRP. So we'll have to set it up. Every other park is like you do either your QRO or your QRP, and you have to alternate through and see how quickly you get to meeting in the middle or something. Make it a little challenge.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, getting your Go box finished. That'll be short on the list here.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Well,
it
cool.
was I think it was definitely better to do like you said, Eric. It wouldn't have been as fun doing it by yourself. I probably wouldn't have been motivated to do all 7 or 10 or whatever. I think it was just more like we were doing it together and we're going to get this done. We're going to go as far as we could. And it was a good time. And like I said, I think we should do it again. I think we should at some point maybe do the Cape. I think that would be a lot of fun. And like I said, it's just about getting out there. I mean, best part for me with ham radio is going out there and activating parks and just being out and being out there, because the one thing that you get is you don't get any noise, at least most of the time. It's just super quiet and you can just really pick up these stations. And I just think it amazes me that like I stick up this basically this stick in the ground and my radio when we're talking to like people. And I can't tell you that the antenna is just phenomenal. That antenna for POTA has got to be, in all aspects, it's got to be the ultimate POTA antenna, because it's compact, it's easy to set up, and it just works. And if we just had like an end fed, we'd have to be like looking for places to string it up. I mean, you can plop that thing anywhere. And like I said, that one park, I think it was Northampton, we were basically on the water. I mean, the thing was like the tripod was like almost like getting wet. Yeah, we're almost in the water. But so it was just it was a really cool thing, and like the gear was just perfect. And like I think if you're going to attempt to do this, you just need to know your gear and know how to set things up if you want to get that many parks. Now, you can go out and do a few parks and try it like that way and just have fun with it. But if you're really going to try to push the limit, make sure you know and make sure your partner knows what they're doing too. And Eric did all the setting up with the filming and the mics and all that stuff, and I did the antennas, and we both cranked the radios up and got it set up. And like I said, we didn't even have to talk. We just knew what we were doing, and we just seemed to get better and better at it. And that's how it all worked. And like I said, we couldn't ask for a better day. Probably my favorite day doing Parks on the Air. so
Oh,
far.
that's awesome. Very cool. So, well, excellent. Well, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us on this Live Free and Ham podcast. If you have not already subscribed, I encourage you to do so. You can leave us a review on iTunes or our website, and you can contact us on our social media for the latest information, shows, and content. So, and one thing I should look into more, I have to, a little honest, can you look into this Patreon thing? Looks interesting. I'm sure we can get a few more buy us a beer links, and every little bit helps. So that'd definitely be a real nice addition. If you want to contact any of us, you can contact us on the livefreeandham.com website. And once again, appreciate everyone tuning in and listening. And from W1SNH, I'll say 7-3.
7-3.
7-3.